Welcome to the Deep Fear channel. Watch closely, stay alert, and don't forget to subscribe. I had always been the kind of person who believed that nature heals the soul. The mountains, the forests, the wind carving its way through pine trees, it all gave me peace. So when my friend Ryan suggested a week-long hiking trip through the Rockies, I didn't hesitate. There would be 4 of us, me, Ryan, his girlfriend Emily, and his younger cousin Mark. Ryan had gotten his hands on a detailed trail map that wasn't common in stores. He claimed it was something he'd found online, shared by hardcore hikers who knew secret paths most tourists never discovered. That should have been my first red flag. But back then, I was just excited for adventure. The night before we left, we gathered in Ryan's garage, checking gear, laughing and teasing each other. But when Ryan pulled out that map, the mood shifted. It wasn't printed on normal paper. It was old, almost parchment-like, with trails marked in faded red ink. "Where'd you get this?" Emily asked, frowning. "Online," Ryan said with a grin. "A guy in a hiking forum sold it to me. Said it shows the real trails in the Rockies, ones the government doesn't mark anymore." Emily rolled her eyes. "That sounds like bullshit." But Ryan insisted, and somehow he convinced us. We started early, the sky still painted with the pale glow of dawn. The air was crisp, the kind of cold that nipped your fingers and made you grateful for the layers on your back. At first, it was perfect. Fresh pine smell, distant bird calls, crunching boots on the dirt path. But after about 5 hours, Ryan insisted we take one of the unmarked trails from his map. "This is where it gets fun," he said, pointing to a narrow path that veered off into thicker woods. Mark hesitated. "That doesn't look like a trail. It looks like just trees." Still, we followed. The forest grew quieter as we moved deeper. The sound of birds faded, and even the wind seemed to hold its breath. The deeper we went, the more I felt a strange pressure in my chest, like the air itself was heavier. That's when we first heard it. A whisper, so faint I thought I imagined it. A voice carried on the breeze, threading through the trees. I froze, straining my ears. "Come back!" Emily turned sharply. "Did you hear that?" We all had. Ryan laughed it off. "It's probably just the wind." But the way Mark's face paled told me he didn't believe that. Neither did I. By the second night, things felt wrong. We camped near a clearing, our fire crackling weakly against the dark. None of us could shake the feeling of being watched. That's when the whispers returned, this time louder, clearer. Closer, just a little closer. The voice seemed to move around us, circling the camp. Emily clutched Ryan's arm. Mark sat stiff, eyes darting into the darkness. I whispered, "Ryan, this isn't funny." He shook his head quickly. "It's not me." The whispers continued all night. None of us slept. The next morning, when we packed up camp, Emily found something etched into a nearby tree. 4 names, ours, written in fresh cuts as though carved just hours before. We hadn't done it, and the cuts were deep, too deep. Panic began to set in. We tried retracing our steps, but the forest seemed to shift. Paths twisted into each other, landmarks vanished. The map Ryan bought was useless. It showed trails that didn't exist and left out the ones that did. By the 3rd day, food was running low. The whispers never stopped. Sometimes they sounded like strangers. Sometimes, horrifyingly, They sounded like us. I'd hear Emily's voice calling my name from deep in the woods, only to turn and see her sitting right beside me. Mark swore he saw someone walking parallel to us through the trees, a figure that looked exactly like Ryan. By the fourth night, Mark was gone. We woke to find his sleeping bag empty, his belongings scattered. In the distance, faintly, we heard him calling. But his voice was wrong. It was layered, like two people speaking at once. "Over here! Help me!" Ryan wanted to search. Emily screamed at him not to. I just sat there, paralyzed, knowing deep down that whatever had taken Mark wasn't going to give him back. That night, I couldn't help it. I followed the whispers. I don't remember deciding to. It was like they pulled me. The trees bent around me, shadows stretching too long, too alive. Eventually, I stumbled into a clearing. Mark was there, or what used to be Mark. He stood stiff, his eyes hollow, his skin pale. His mouth moved, but the sound that came out wasn't his voice. It was dozens of voices layered together, whispering in unison. "You came back." Behind him, shapes shifted in the trees. Dozens of figures, all wrong, too tall, too thin, faces blurred like smoke. I ran. When I stumbled back into camp, Emily was gone too. Only Ryan remained, sitting by the fire, staring blankly into the flames. He didn't even look at me, just whispered, "They said my name." The next morning, he was gone. Putte! I don't know how I made it out. The forest seemed to let me go, like it had gotten what it wanted. When I finally staggered onto a main road, a ranger found me. They said I was lucky to be alive. But when I tried to explain what happened, they just looked at me with pity. Mark, Emily, and Ryan were never found. But sometimes, when I'm alone at night, I hear it again. That whisper. "Come back!" And God help me. Part of me wants to. Story 2. The Lost Trail of Appalachia. There are places in the Appalachian Mountains that don't appear on any map. Old hunters talk about them in hushed tones. Trails that were once carved out by settlers or native tribes, but abandoned for reasons no one explains. I didn't believe in that kind of folklore, not until last fall. I was hiking alone, my pack heavy on my shoulders, my boots sinking into the damp earth. My plan was simple. Follow the main ridge trail for 3 days, camp under the stars, and then loop back. But then I saw it. A narrow, half-hidden trail that branched off from the main one. It was marked by 2 stones stacked neatly, almost deliberately. Something about it pulled at me, the way curiosity always does. I told myself I'd just follow it for a little while, just to see where it went. That decision still haunts me. The trail dipped sharply, winding between ancient oaks whose branches knitted overhead like a cathedral ceiling. It was quiet, too quiet. Even the insects seemed to vanish the deeper I went. A mile in, I noticed carvings on the trees, symbols I didn't recognize, circles with jagged lines through them, stick-like figures with no heads. At first, I thought they were just old trailblazes. But as the sun dipped lower, the carvings grew stranger. Some looked like faces, mouths stretched too wide, eyes carved hollow. By nightfall, I found a small clearing with the remains of a fire pit, blackened stones, bones scattered nearby. Animal bones, I hoped. I should have turned back then, but something inside me whispered, "Keep going." I set up camp, though sleep never came. The forest was alive with sounds, rustling leaves, snapping branches, and then the voices. soft at first, like murmurs carried by the wind. Then louder, clearer. You shouldn't be here. Leave, before it's too late. I froze in my tent, every muscle tight. My flashlight beam shook as I aimed it towards the tree line. Nothing, just shadows. But when I finally unzipped my tent, I found something waiting for me. A small bundle of twigs tied together with red string, resting just inches from the entrance. It hadn't been there before. The next morning, I pushed deeper along the path. Maybe I was too stubborn, or maybe I was already under its spell. Around midday, I saw them, figures, standing among the trees. At first, I thought they were hikers, but they didn't move, didn't speak. Just stood there, half hidden in shadow. Their faces, I couldn't see them clearly, like the air itself blurred them. Every time I looked away, they were closer. By evening, I couldn't stand it anymore. I broke into a run, branches whipping my face, lungs burning. The forest seemed endless, the trail looping back on itself. That night, I didn't bother with a tent. I just collapsed against a tree, clutching my knife, praying for dawn. At sunrise, I stumbled into another clearing. This one was different. Old cabins, rotted and broken, leaned in the shadows. A ghost town, hidden deep in the forest. The air smelled of mold and rust. Inside one cabin, I found journals, pages yellowed with age, written in shaky handwriting. The forest doesn't let us leave. It knows our names now. The watchers take one every night. The last entry chilled me to the bone. If you're reading this, it already knows you too. That's when I heard footsteps behind me. Slow, heavy, right outside the cabin door. I didn't think. I bolted out the back, crashing through the undergrowth. I didn't stop running until I burst onto a gravel service road, lungs raw, legs trembling. A park ranger found me hours later. He asked where I'd been. When I told him about the trail, his face hardened. "There is no trail there," he said flatly. "And if you know what's good for you, you'll forget it." I tried to argue, to explain the carvings, the cabins, the voices. He just shook his head. "You're lucky it lets you go." I made it back home. I told myself I'd leave it behind. But some nights, I wake to hear footsteps outside my window. And once, taped to my front door, I found a bundle of twigs tied with red string, the same as the one I saw outside my tent. The forest hasn't forgotten me, and I don't think it ever will. Story 3. Blood Pines of Yosemite. I worked as a seasonal ranger in Yosemite a few summers back. Most of my duties were boring, guiding tourists, checking permits, picking up trash. But sometimes I was sent on solo patrols into the less traveled backcountry. That's where I made the mistake. It started with a call from headquarters, reports of strange noises near a restricted section of forest, an area nicknamed the Blood Pines by locals. They wanted me to investigate. I'd heard the stories. The Blood Pines were supposedly cursed. Settlers had vanished there centuries ago. Hunters never came back. Hikers got lost. Some people said the trees themselves drank blood. I didn't believe it. Not then. I set out with my radio, pack, and rifle. At first, it felt like any other patrol. But the deeper I walked, the more oppressive the forest became. The air was wrong, thicker, heavier, as if I were breathing through cloth. Birds didn't sing, squirrels didn't chatter. It was a silence so complete that I could hear my own heartbeat pounding in my ears. And then I noticed the trees. The pines were massive, their trunks dark and rough. But some of them had stains, dark streaks running down their bark, seeping into the soil like dried blood. I told myself it was sap, just sap. But when I touched it, it was sticky, warm, and smelled metallic, like iron. By late afternoon, I stumbled onto a clearing. In the center stood a ring of stones, blackened by old fires. Bones littered the ground, small ones, like from animals, but also larger, human-sized. And carved into the stones were symbols, circles with jagged edges, figures with outstretched arms. The same symbols I'd seen in old ranger reports, ones the Park Service told us not to talk about. As I bent down to inspect one of the stones, my radio crackled. But instead of static, I heard a voice. "You shouldn't be here." It wasn't anyone from HQ. It was deeper, layered, as if dozens of people whispered at once. I dropped the radio. And that's when I saw movement. Shadows, slipping between the trees, circling me. At first, I thought it was other hikers. But as they stepped into the fading light, I realized how wrong I was. They wore tattered red robes, their faces hidden by hoods. Each carried something: knives, crude lanterns, bundles of sticks. They didn't speak. They just stood there, swaying, as if waiting. I backed away slowly, reaching for my rifle. But before I could raise it, one of them stepped forward. The hood slipped back just enough for me to see its face, or lack of one. It was smooth, pale skin, no eyes, no mouth, just a blank surface that still somehow smiled at me. Oh! I ran. I don't remember deciding to. My body just moved. Branches tore at my arms, roots caught my boots, but I didn't stop. The whispers followed me, louder now. "Stay. Join us. Bleed for us." When I finally collapsed, gasping, I realized I wasn't alone. In front of me stood a tree unlike the others. Its trunk was split wide, like a gaping wound. From the opening, thick red liquid oozed down into the earth. And from inside that hollow, something moved. A pale hand, long and thin, reached out. "Come closer." The voices were inside my head now. My vision blurred. My body felt like it was being pulled toward the tree, against my will. I fought it. I screamed. I dug my nails into the dirt until they bled. Somehow, I broke free. I don't remember how I got out. One moment, I was crawling through the underbrush, the whispers clawing at my skull. The next, I was on a familiar trail, the sun rising over the ridge. HQ found me hours later, wandering aimlessly, my uniform torn, my skin scratched raw. When they asked what happened, I told them I got lost. I didn't dare mention the robes, the stones, the tree that bled. But sometimes, late at night, I dream of it. The hand reaching out, the faceless figures waiting, and I wake with the taste of iron on my tongue. Story 4. Frozen Screams of Alaska. Alaska is not forgiving country. The winters stretch on endlessly. The cold seeps into your bones, and the silence can drive you mad. I signed up for a guided winter trek through the Alaskan wilderness, a week-long hike with 4 strangers and 1 guide. It was supposed to be breathtaking: glaciers, frozen lakes, the northern lights overhead. The guide, a man named Harris, warned us on the first night, "Stay close to camp. Out here, the snow has a way of swallowing people." I thought he meant frostbite or avalanches. I didn't understand what he really meant. Not yet. The second night, as we sat around a weak fire, we heard it. A scream. Not human, not animal, something in between. It rose high and cracked like ice shattering, echoing across the frozen valley. We all froze. Harris's face went pale. He whispered, "It's too early in the season for them." When we pressed him, he refused to say more. He just stoked the fire higher, muttering under his breath. That night, none of us slept. Morning revealed tracks around camp. Not bear, not wolf. The prints were long, almost human, but stretched unnaturally, as if whoever left them had bones that bent the wrong way. They circled the tents, then disappeared into the tree line. When Harris saw them, he cursed under his breath. "We move, now." We marched hard that day, the cold biting through every layer. But no matter how far we went, the tracks followed, always just behind us. On the fourth day, we woke to find one of the group missing. Jenna. Her pack was still there, her boots, everything. Only her sleeping bag was empty, zipped neatly closed as if she'd never been there. We searched the snow for hours, but there were no signs of struggle, no blood, no drag marks, just one set of those long, warped tracks leading away into the forest. That night, the screams came again, louder, closer, and this time they sounded like Jenna. The fifth day broke us. As we trudged across a frozen river, I saw something beneath the ice. Faces, dozens of them, pale and twisted, mouths open in silent screams, their hands pressed against the underside of the ice, frozen mid-reach. I screamed and stumbled back. The others rushed over, but by then, the ice was clear. Just black water beneath. But I know what I saw. That night, another hiker vanished. His name was Kyle. We heard his voice calling in the storm, begging us to follow. Harris forced us to stay put, but I swear I saw his shape moving just beyond the firelight. His face stretched too long, his eyes black. And by the sixth night, it was just me, Harris, and one other hiker. The whispers came first, carried on the wind. Then the figures appeared, tall, thin, wrapped in tattered frost-covered skin. Their mouths opened too wide, and the screams that poured out were layered. Jenna's voice, Kyle's voice, others too. Harris fired his rifle into the dark, but the sound only seemed to draw them closer. Snow whipped around us, the storm swallowing our cries. The last thing I remember is Harris shoving me towards the sled, yelling, "Don't look back!" I woke up in a ranger station 2 days later. A search party had found me half frozen, delirious. They said I was lucky, but they never found Harris or the others. Sometimes when I'm alone, I still hear it. That sound like ice splitting, layered with human voices. And when winter comes and the wind rattles my windows, I swear I can hear Jenna scream in it, begging me to come back. Story 5. The Canyon That Watches. Arizona's deserts have a beauty that feels almost alien. Towering red cliffs, endless sky, and silence that presses down on you like a weight. I had come to hike a lesser-known canyon trail. Locals warned me it wasn't well maintained, but I was chasing solitude, not comfort. The first miles were breathtaking. Sunlight painted the rock walls gold, and the wind carried the smell of sage. But the further I went, the narrower the canyon became. The walls seemed to close in, and shadows lingered long after the sun should have burned them away. That's when I felt it. The sense of being watched. By late afternoon, I stumbled on a rock face covered in carvings. Not graffiti. Older, much older. Figures with hollow eyes. Circles with lines radiating outward, like suns with too many arms. At the bottom of one carving was a phrase etched deep, "The canyon sees you." I laughed nervously, brushing dust from the stone. But as I turned away, I swore the carved eyes were following me. I set camp under an overhang. The desert grew cold fast, the heat bleeding away with the sun. That's when I heard the first sound, a stone tumbling. Small, but close. I shone my flashlight, expecting to catch a coyote or maybe a snake. But instead, I saw something high on the canyon rim. A figure, motionless, watching. When I blinked, it was gone. I didn't sleep that night. The next morning, I hiked deeper. The trail twisted, the canyon walls rising so high that the sky was just a sliver of blue. At one point, I called out just to break the silence. "Hello?" The echo came back, but it wasn't my voice. It was slower, deeper, and it said, "Leave." My blood ran cold. I quickened my pace, but no matter how far I walked, the sense of eyes burning into my back never left. By the third day, I found something impossible. A campsite, abandoned, tents shredded, gear scattered, footprints frozen in the sand. The strangest part? The footprints didn't lead away. They circled the tents over and over, as if the campers had walked in endless loops until their tracks filled the ground. And on one tent wall, scratched deep into the fabric, were the words, "It watches us." That night, the whispers began. "Look up. Look up." Against my better judgment, I did. High on the rim, the figure stood again. Closer now, its arms too long, its head tilted at a wrong angle. On the fourth day, the canyon changed. Paths I'd taken before were gone. Walls shifted. It was as if the canyon was alive, rearranging itself. That night, I woke to find stones stacked around my sleeping bag in a perfect circle. I scrambled to my feet, heart pounding. In the dim light of my dying fire, I saw dozens of figures lining the canyon walls. Tall, thin, their faces blurred as though the stone itself had shaped them. They didn't move. They didn't breathe. They just watched. I ran. Climbing the canyon wall with bleeding hands, my lungs tearing, I refused to look down. The whispers followed, louder now, hundreds of voices overlapping. "We see you. We see you." When I finally pulled myself over the rim, the desert stretched out before me. Empty. Silent. But not safe. Because standing in the sand ahead of me was one last figure, taller than the rest. Its face a perfect mirror of mine. It smiled and whispered in my own voice. Now we watched together. I never told anyone what happened. Who would believe me? But I haven't been the same since. Everywhere I go, I feel eyes on me. In mirrors, in windows, in shadows at the edge of the room. And sometimes, when I close my eyes at night, I hear the canyon echoing back in my own voice. Leave, leave, leave. But I can't. Because the canyon never lets go of what it sees.
If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to subscribe. Was it paranormal or just something we can't explain? Share your thoughts in the comments and remember, never watch alone at night.